And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is ajparr, author and remote viewer who had a near-death-like experience, which we're going to learn about and more. AJ, thank you for joining me today and welcome.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. For those who don't know me, I am ajparr. I am a journalist, and in 1991, something happened that changed my life completely. I was 3 nights in a row, around 3 a.m., I woke up in the middle of the night. And the first night, when I realized it was completely dark, pitch dark, I was surprised. So I raised my hands up to my face, and I could not see them. So I really did not understand. But I woke up shortly after, found myself in my bed. The second night, it happened again, but that night, I stayed a little longer, and I felt a presence. I felt like there was someone or something in that darkness. And it was really scary. So I got scared, okay, and once more, I found myself my bed. I said, wow, this is really strange, 2 nights in a row. I suffered from asthma all my youth, and I also was diagnosed later with sleep apnea, so I don't know if I stopped breathing or not. But the third night, I found myself in this darkness once again. I raised my hands, I could not see them, and I said, wow, what's going on? This is the third night. And all of a sudden, I felt that presence stronger than before. So I really got scared, and I heard a voice. So there was a presence, not only a presence, but it spoke to me, and it told me, surrender, all is one. At first, since I was scared, I felt in my chest like when people are scared, this is something I realized later. When people are scared, you feel like an emptiness in your chest, okay? It's also similar that when you jump and fall, you feel that empty space in your chest. As soon as he said, all is one, I said, okay, I'll trust this voice. Supposedly, that person who's talking to me must be me if all is one. But I don't know why I trusted 100%. And as I relaxed, that sensation in my chest that I first thought it was fear started growing and expanding. And I said, wait, what's going on? I feel as if I was more scared or as if I was falling, but all of a sudden it continued expanding. And I decided to trust. So I relaxed and it grew larger than myself, larger than my house, larger than the world. And all of a sudden, I kind of exploded and I found myself in the middle, I would say, of a colossal star. Found myself in the middle of light. The strange thing is that I could see up, down, to the right, to the left, in all directions at the same time. So in the middle, instead of my body, it was empty space. The fact that you can see up and down, to right, to the left, places you. If I have a body, I cannot. If I see towards the front, it's impossible to see behind me. And what I experienced then was that I was this light that expanded infinitely in all directions. I could also focus on the center of this light and understand that it was like empty. And I could also follow each ray endlessly, and each ray was surrounded by empty space. So each ray surrounded by empty space, there was a small empty space between one ray and the others. Each ray had its own, let's call it vacuum, where it existed. And I felt I was full and empty at the same time. I also felt that I was one with the universe. I could not think, really. I did not remember I was human. I did not have a body. And all I could feel, I was overwhelmed by this sensation. The sound was, it's undescribable, but there was like wind, really strong wind. And I don't know how many hours or minutes or seconds I stayed there, but it seemed to be a long time. All of a sudden, I found myself in my bed, and I said, "What?" Because the memory was so fresh that I could not understand it. I mean, how is it possible? I didn't know that you could see up and down, to the right, to the left, in all directions at the same time. So this was in 1991. Basically, there was no internet, or it was barely starting. And I couldn't understand what was going on. But I did feel, when I woke up, I felt that I was one with everything that surrounded me, and that my body was like a sphere. I felt that I extended in all directions. I still had that sensation. So I got up, I went to the wall, and I said, I pressed my hand against the wall to make contact with that part of reality that is not me. And I could feel that I was the wall, I was the hand pressing against the wall, but I was also the wall pressing back. So I could feel myself in this side of reality, me, and I could also feel myself in the other side. Wow, this was really shocking. During 2 or 3 days, I had this sensation that I was everything that surrounded me. And since this was so confusing, I asked God, or the universe, what had happened. And I had this download. It was a brief explanation of the creation of reality, the creation of the world, that explained to me the hidden mystery behind all religions, behind all philosophies. It was like the greatest wisdom that lies behind this reality. And it said more or less like this: in the beginning was the One. The One was alone, but he wanted to play. So the One divided himself in two and gave number two amnesia, and thus the game began. That was it. All of a sudden I said, wow, we are that one. We are God, but we don't remember it. So at the time, I was a Freemason. I had been in different religions. I had not had an experience like that. But once I started researching, first thing I got was the Gospels, and see, Jesus must have mentioned this. And then I started finding commonalities between my experience and the light that is mentioned in the Bible. At the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And the light plays a big role in in basically all religions. So I said to myself, "Wow, I'm going to write a book," because back then I thought, I'm going to write a book and I'll be famous. Okay, so I started writing this book, and I heard this, like, a question that came out from my heart. The question was very simple. It said, "Why?" I understood perfectly that it had a double meaning. Why are you writing this book? And why do you want to know this secret knowledge? And before I heard the voice finish this why, the answer came out from my heart, but I did not consciously formulate it. It simply came out because I want to write a book and be famous. And I said, oh no, wrong answer. I realized that was the wrong answer, but it came out from me and there was no way to lie. So I fell on my knees. I said, okay, God, I promise I won't write a book. I will not write a book. I will not tell anyone about it in written form. I will not tell anyone about this experience. This was in 1991. I still haven't written a book with my experience. However, 2 or 3 years ago, I met Dr. Yvonne Kaysen. She is the Canadian doctor that coined the term spiritually transformative experiences, STEs. So I was interviewing her on my YouTube channel, which is focused on NDEs, and I'll get to that part later. But she asked me, have you ever had a spiritually transformative experience? I've never heard that term before. So I thought she had asked me, have you had a spiritual experience? And I said, have I? Wow, yes, I need to tell you. So I told her, and that's when I started realizing that I could share my story among certain people. I started going to the sharing circles, both in SAI and also in IANS. And to get back to 1991, after I said this, that I would not write a book, I started researching. Basically, I said, okay, the Hindus, the Bhagavad Gita, they also mention this light that it shines more like a thousand suns in the sky. And the Buddhists also mention the clear light, and the Kabbalists talk about the enlightenment. Also, the Hindus talk about the enlightenment. So I started finding that imparted this common teaching that is hidden in all religions, that is present in all religions. And when I started reading the scriptures, I could tell which parts referred to this teaching. And I found that Jesus had two teachings, one for the masses and another for his close disciples. And this, you can find this in Matthew 13. The disciples asked Jesus, why do you speak in parables? And he said, okay, I speak in parables because to you, the apostles, I have given the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but not to them. I speak in parables because even if they see, they will perceive nothing, and even if they listen, they will understand nothing. He also said, do not throw pearls to the swine. So I continued researching, and I did find that Jesus mentions, he talks about the kingdom of heaven. And I realized that John the Baptist, his message was, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Of course it's near, it's within you. And Jesus in the beginning, when John the Baptist was imprisoned, Jesus, according to the Gospels, started preaching that the kingdom of heaven is near. He also said that his kingdom was not of this world. He also mentioned not to gather treasures on earth, but to gather treasures in heaven. And he also said that where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. So all of a sudden, I realized that the heart, which was the origin of this expansion that I felt in my chest, also was also mentioned by Jesus. And Jesus said something in the Sermon of the Mount. He said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." So there was like a hidden teaching here. He also said, "Let there be your eyes. Your eye is the lamp of the body, and if your eye is good, your body will be filled with light." So after realizing this, I went on further and I started studying the first Christians before the creation of the Catholic Church, before the Romans got hold of this new sect. And it there was a meditation practice among the first Christians. They called it contemplation, but they also talked about silence. Be still, realize that I am God, or keeping silence. You can contact this inner divinity, or whatever you want to call it. So I spent the following 30 years studying different religions, and I wrote over 20 books analyzing different religions or different spiritual teachers and comparing them with this original teaching. That the oldest reference I found was in the Indus Valley at the end of the Stone Age, before the Vedas were written in India. They were already talking about Maya, the world of illusion. And they were saying that we are the divinity. People talk a lot about, the Matrix, that this is all uh, an illusion or a video game. Of course it is, because that's the only way. If God belongs to this universe of non-duality, if everything is one, then there can be no multiplicity there. The only way that we can have this material universe is by having dualism. And you cannot have God does not accept dualism in that oneness. So when he divided himself into two, he created dualism. And even scientists recognize that the smallest particles of matter have positive and negative charges. So everything is dual. When they say negative, it's not necessarily bad. No, positive and negative. We say good and bad. We say tall and short. But these are simply labels we are giving to this matrix or this illusion. However, we are here, and our journey in reality is to go back home, to remember who we are. And that's basically the spiritual journey. In Hinduism, they also talk about Lila, the game behind reality. They say this is all a game. And the Bhagavad Gita also mentions that it is a game. Don't be worried. Arjuna was with Krishna, and Arjuna was about to participate in a war. And he asked Krishna, look, the war is against my own family, because the family had divided itself and they were going to fight, cousins against nephews and, uncles. And he said, how can I fight against my family? And Krishna said, don't worry, no one dies. Even if you kill them, even if they kill you, you will all be all right. There is no problem. So that was really strong. So that basically explains why this knowledge must be kept hidden, secret. You cannot throw pearls to the swine. Why? Because if they could use it against you, basically. Well, the thing is that I started writing books, and I started searching for people who had had a similar experience in different religions. And every time I joined many religions, and I asked everybody, have you had this experience? And I said, no, I could not find anyone. And all of a sudden, about 4 years ago, I met a colleague, another journalist. She was a female from Spain, and she had had a near-death experience. So one day we were talking, and I told her, look, I had this experience. And she said, but nobody understands me. And she said, ah, don't worry. I also had the same experience. I went through that darkness. I also merged with the light. I could see in all directions at the same time. They call it 360-degree visions. And this darkness, they call it the void. So I was really blown away. So I had never paid much attention to NDEs. So I said, since I am a journalist, I said, okay, I'm going to start watching YouTube videos and reading about it. But I then decided that I was going to start interviewing people, because it's not the same. I mean, you can watch a video, but if you start meeting people, you can ask them certain questions. And that's how I found out. For example, PMH Atwater mentioned that the void is necessary in order to have light. It is in the Bible, it says that God created the light and separated the light from darkness. You can only have light if there are shadows, because it's part of the dual world. So this void exists. This light with unconditional love, which is eternal wisdom, which is, people call it God, but it can also be called universal energy or universal consciousness. It has many names. It is also perceived by near-death experiencers and also people who have had mystical experiences. But however, I was really, like I said, I was blown away because near-death experiencers have met this other dimension. For example, they say there is no time there. They say that wherever they focus their attention, they automatically or instantly go there. So there seems to be no limitations by space or time. And they feel that they are one with everything. When they have their life reviews, they can feel what the other person feels. And what I concluded is that in the other world, although you can keep your personality, you're closer to that oneness. So I studied also Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism says that whatever you can conclude with words is a mistake. For example, and also the Taoism, the Tao Te Ching says the Tao God that you mention is not the Tao. The God that you talk about is not God. Why? Because the JeffMara that I mentioned is not JeffMara. The water that I mentioned is not water. You cannot drink it. So words are only labels. And that's part of the illusory world. That's part of Maya. We think in terms of words. I am happy. I am sad. This is great. This is not great. For example, someone who has never tasted chocolate, can you really describe it? No. Someone who has never tasted water, can you use words to describe that? No. What about taking a shower? What do you feel when you're taking a shower? What do you feel when you jump into a river or jump into a pool? Can you tell someone who has never experienced that what it is? You cannot. So the Zen Buddhists, also Krishnamurti and Eckhart Tolle and uh, Meister Eckhart, a lot of wise people, or wise men and women, concluded that words are useless. They only serve to communicate when you already know. For example, if you've never seen a giraffe, it's hard to, to talk to someone and explain what a giraffe is. But if the person you're talking to has seen a giraffe, then it's easy. However, when I say giraffe, the giraffe that you imagine is not the same that the person imagines. When I say dog, the dog that I have in my mind is not the same dog that you have in your mind. So those are the limitations of this illusory world. And one of the biggest mistakes is to find an explanation for mystical experiences, for what they call the ineffable. The ineffable is something that cannot be described, and it is that word is used in basically all religions, including the Christian mystics, Buddhists, Hinduists, and you name it. So after I started researching people, I concluded that I don't know if I died or not. I don't want to assure it because I'm not sure, but I did go through the void. I did feel like I left my body. I did merge with the light. I did feel that oneness. I did feel integrated with everything, and I did meet that uh, unconditional love, unconditional wisdom. It also took me years, decades to integrate this experience and to talk about it freely. So basically, that's my experience, Jeff.
AJ, thank you for sharing it with us. I want to go back and ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
And let's first start with, who do you think that presence was? Was it your higher self or a guide?
Well, I think it is a representation of our higher self. And our higher self is a representation of that oneness. We all have that oneness within. They call it the Christ consciousness. They call it the Krishna consciousness. We all have that ineffable divinity within. And it takes different forms. Why? Because we cannot perceive other dimensions. For example, a two-dimensional being only sees a flat world, okay? For example, instead of seeing JeffMara, I would see your shadow. When you're standing up and the sun or some light hits you, there is a shadow. That shadow is flat, okay? So actually what we see of those higher beings is their shadow. If someone from the 2D world sees me, he will probably see my shadow, a flat, dark image that moves. Yeah, it moves, but that person could never conceive this 3D world. Okay. The same goes with those beings that since they live in higher dimensions, what we see is only a representation or a shadow of what they really are. And that shadow is seen through our unconscious. This is not something that they decide. It is Carl Jung studied this. So I gave this a lot of thought. And Carl Jung studied mystical visions, mystical dreams. And he said there's something called the archetypes. The archetypes translate these mystical beings into what we each can manage. For example, if you see a being of light that is all love, that is all wisdom, and you're a Christian, you will say, okay, that's Jesus. But uh, in Africa, in the African jungle, 3,000 years ago, before Jesus was born, probably someone had a near-death experience and also met this light being. And he would not say it was Jesus. He would say it was an African god. The same, I was talking the other day with Gregory Shushan, and he was telling me that the ancient Egyptians, when they had near-death experiences, they met a being of light, and they said it was Ra, the god of the sun. So I don't believe that Jesus, or that being of light that is all love and all wisdom and all peace and that loves us, was born 2,000 years ago. No. He existed even before mankind. They are in another dimension. They have always existed. And there's a part of the Gospels that proves, more or less proves this, proved it to me, because when there's a part called the transfiguration of God, of Jesus, Jesus takes some of his disciples up to the top of a mountain, and all of a sudden, according to the Gospels, his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. And that's the same description that near-death experiencers give to these people they meet on the other side. They are all dressed in white, and their faces shine like the sun. So that is a proof found in the gospel of not only of what people see in near-death experiences, but of the actual true physical form of Jesus. He
Let me
showed himself as he is.
let me stop you for one moment.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
you also heard the voice.
Yes.
Did the voice sound like your own voice when you think, or was it a completely different voice from yours?
No, it was a completely different voice from mine.
So you're saying that this being of light, which some interpret as Jesus, some interpret as a light being, and whatever their interpretation is, this being is the one that spoke to you.
No, not necessarily. I think it was my inner consciousness, my higher self, or it was me, but it didn't sound like me because, like I said, it can be filtered by many ways, but I cannot assure that it was the being of light. No, I don't think so.
All right.
I think it was more like me, or maybe it was. I really cannot. I don't have a clear answer to that question,
All
but I
right.
feel that it wasn't God, or it was more like my inner self, because I realized then I felt, okay, you are me. I heard what I felt was the voice that was talking to me was me, but it didn't sound like me.
Right. But when I asked you earlier if who you thought the being was, if it was your higher self or some other being, I felt like you were saying that your higher self is part of,
Okay.
is God. Maybe I'm
Well, yeah.
misinterpreting it.
Well, yeah. That's what I meant. What I meant to say is that everyone's higher self is a representation of that oneness that lies within us, which we call God. Okay, so indirectly, yes, it could have been God. Okay, but I cannot say it was completely, because it's like an intermediary stage. It, I did not feel, didn't sound like God. It sounded more like it was my deep consciousness telling me. I don't know, me from the future. I don't know what it was.
Yeah. Well, at one point you said that you were a sphere, right?
Yes, right.
Would you consider yourself to be an orb, like when people see orbs?
Well, yeah. Sometimes when I meditate, I only have to remember being there, And all of a sudden, I feel myself radiating light in all directions. And that star, if you take a star and make it small, perhaps it is an orb. I don't know. These are mysteries. And like I said, if you try to put things in words, you may make a mistake. There's another thing I found, Jeff. That's I'm sure you've noticed it. One of the commonalities is that when people have these experiences, if they see, for example, Buddha, they will return and say, Buddhism is the only way. If they see Jesus, they say, Christianity is the only way. I have the truth. If they see Krishna, they will say, Hinduism is the only way. So it's what I call the Tower of Babel syndrome. Why? Because in the Bible, you talk about a Tower of Babel. People who went up to reach heaven, expected to reach heaven, and God made them speak in different tongues. So they could not understand each other. So they would stop building that tower. So what I feel is this, that tower represents meditation. It could be also ayahuasca, all these ways of reaching oneness. It also NDEs, STEs, okay? But when you go to the top of the tower and you have this experience, either with oneness or with the representation of oneness, and you come down speaking a different language. Why? Because the Christian will see Jesus and will come down saying, no, Jesus is the only way. The Buddhist will see Buddha, and the Hindu will see Krishna or any of the gods. The people from Islam will see Muhammad or Rumi, and when they come back, they are really convinced that what they saw is the only way. And I don't want to fall into that category. I know that whatever I say is only my perspective. I am against these holy wars that are taking place in the world. I am against people from different Christian sects saying, we have the truth. We are the 144,000 chosen. These other Christians aren't. The other Christian sects are wrong. Or the Catholics say, no, no, we have God is with us. All the Christians are wrong. So that's what happens when people have a religion. They take a stand and they suddenly say, the others are wrong. I am right. I am saved. The others are doomed. So that's what I call the Tower of Babel syndrome. And when people realize it, and this not only takes place with religions, it also with politics, with whichever way of life you choose, this sensation of owning the truth is a big mistake. Mm-hmm. That's why I try not to make affirmations that could be the consequence of this Tower of Babel syndrome. And I'm sure that when the world realizes that all religions are one, that all religions represent oneness, represent the light, represent love, represent this higher dimensions and our contact with them, the world will be a better place. People will stop fighting each other because of their different religious creeds. And I'm sure you've seen that also with channelers. Some channelers, okay, they channel light beings, other channel Pleiadians, or other Arcturians, other Jeshua. But someone who channels Jeshua says something, and then another person who also channels Jeshua has a slightly different message. So, to what degree can we be certain of what they say? Or you, Jeff, you have heard so many versions of the truth. I think it's some of them, I'm not saying all of them, may be a victim of the Tower of Babel syndrome.
I'm going to take you in a different direction. You spoke about enlightenment,
Yes?
and it got me thinking about the word. Have you researched the origins of the word? Because I wonder if it really meant something to do with a person experiencing a light being or being in the light. You know, typically when we think of someone who's enlightened, they've somehow been revealed some sort of knowledge or they've understood the world's mysteries. But I wonder if it literally has something to do with being in the light as well.
Yeah, well, I think it does, but not by being in the light once or twice or whatever does not mean you are enlightened. Living in the presence of the light 24 hours a day means you are enlightened. Knowing that I am you and that you are me, and that we should not do to others what we would not like others to do to us. Having that knowledge that all is one and living with the light in the chest, I guess, 24-hour, 24/7, that is an enlightened person. I don't believe that, people say, no, I had a spiritual awakening. That doesn't mean you are enlightened. Also, I have a quote here from a 19th century Kabbalist called Rabbi Yaakov Abunatzaira. I think that's how you pronounce it. But he says, as long as a man does not know the Torah's secret wisdom, he walks in darkness, like a blind man in a chimney. But when one knows this wisdom, he emerges from darkness into light. And according to the Kabbalah, the science of enlightenment, of experiencing unity with God and defeating illusion, is the essence of the Kabbalah, which was the secret teaching of Judaism, therefore, also the essence of the secret teachings of Jesus, therefore, also the essence of the secret teachings of Hinduism, Buddhism, and all of them, because Hinduists, they also talk about enlightenment. Buddhists talk about awakening. They said that Buddha was the awakened one, but in their writings, they also talk about the light. So it's really strange that this word enlightenment is found in different religions, and that in the Kabbalah says that the science of enlightenment implies experiencing unity with God and of defeating illusion. The basis of Buddhism and Hinduism is to defeat illusion, to defeat Maya. That's why Jesus said, I am not of this world, So I really cannot explain it all in words. I can only give an idea of what it means, but I know I know that there are some limitations. I can only suggest it,
You talked about the simulation or the matrix. You've talked about the void, and you spoke about dualism. I feel like this simulation, or whatever you want to call it, this realm we live in, is a realm of dualism. And I feel like the void is a realm separate from everything else, like a starting point to go to other realms. Do you feel that way, or are you thinking that it is the opposite of the light realm or the heavenly realms?
Well, yeah, I had that question too, and the only explanation I have found so far came from PMH Atwater, who has had 3 near-death experiences, and she talks about the void in her books, and she said it is necessary for the light to exist, because since everything we perceive is dual, so The opposite of the light is this complete darkness. However, it is like a portal, and that's why people say they go through a tunnel. That is a way of, it's a different void, but they also see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I really don't have the answers, but I have been asking about it, and people give me different explanations. For example, the tunnel that one near-death experiencer sees differs from the ones that other near-death experiencers see, because it all goes through the filter of the archetypes of our unconscious. So I read somewhere, I think it was, I don't know if it was Bruce Grayson who said, there are some cultures where there are no tunnels. So they don't use that word. The tunnel is something more Western. It's part of the Western civilization. But there are some cultures that they don't use the word tunnel. So even the word tunnel, or the concept of it being a tunnel, other people say it's like in Star Wars when you're traveling really fast and you see the stars passing by. Yeah, it sort of looks like a tunnel. But I think that by putting things into words, we are being inaccurate. Like I said, you cannot describe what is happiness, what is light. I can talk about the light, but it's I cannot describe the light that I saw. I agree that it was not a blinding light because it did not hurt my eyes, but it was brighter than any other light I had seen. And I was within it. I was the light. So there is no way I can communicate this. I can only suggest, more or less, what I had. And regarding the void, it's really hard to understand. All I know is that in the Bible it says that God in the beginning created the light, and then he separated the light from darkness. Maybe that was a way of giving birth to positive and negative.
In the beginning, I mentioned that you are a remote viewer.
Oh, yes.
Can you share some of the success you've had with that?
Yes. Well, several years ago, I met Dr. Melvin Morse. He was the pioneer researcher of children's NDEs, and he was trained on remote viewing by the people who were involved in the military, U.S. And he took the initiative to start training me. He developed something called spiritual sight, which is based on the remote viewing protocol, and it involves certain techniques that have to do with remote viewing, but he started training me. I get into deep meditation, then I must follow a process. Then he has an image, and it's not that I guess what the image is. No, he starts asking me questions. What do you feel? Is it solid? Touch it, imagine it. So it's, I more or less could feel what it was. So I must have tried around 10 times before I realized. Every time I was successful, because in my meditation, I remember when I was back in that one mess. And when I did the actual practice, I nailed it each time. So there was an important research that the Institute of Scientific Study of Consciousness is doing, hired by the Bigelow Institute of Consciousness, BICS. And actually, it is financed by Bigelow, and it is applying spiritual sight or remote viewing to mediumship. So I was also brought up to this research, and I participated in it actively, not only as a subject, but also as a researcher. And I'm working on it, and we signed a non-disclosure agreement. I cannot give many details, but it involves 6 teams in different parts of the world, in which we are asking mediums and remote viewers certain questions, and to see if the 6 different groups, one from Africa, the other from Brazil, another in the States, to see the coincidences and the commonalities. So I'm really into that right now. I'm actually working on this project, and I would say it's a direct consequence of my experiences. I also had many lucid dreams throughout my life. I have met masters in dreams. I have been in temples in dreams. I have had explanations given to me uh, in dreams and in visions. So it's something I cannot control really, but that have driven me into this spiritual path. Even if I don't want to, every now and then I will have this mystical experience, and that will, bring me back to continue researching and continue studying. And the remote viewing is based on the idea that this universe is one, that it is basically a mathematical, that all is energy, and that this energy is information, and that there is no time, there is no space, so you can access whatever you want in the world. They call it also the Akashic Records, whatever. It has many names, but this contacting the non-dual reality, or the non-local reality, they also call it, where everything is entangled. In quantum physics, they talk about entanglement. Well, the fact is that everything is entangled, and that we are all one. In the end, it was all it all came from the same source, and that explains why people can contact dead spirits.
You have a book out about NDEs called Stairway to Heaven.
Yes.
If people want to find out more about it, should they go to your website or Amazon?
No, they should go to Amazon. This is actually a book I wrote because after interviewing people about a year ago, I found 9 commonalities in people who had experiences either with God, Jesus, or paradise. I did not have these experiences, but it was really interesting. So the 9, for example, seeing the light, meeting the light, that's one characteristic. Going through a tunnel is not an experience of heavenly NDEs. You can go through a tunnel without having a heavenly NDE. Also, leaving your body and looking at yourself from above, that's not heavenly NDEs, but hearing a voice, visiting the lobby of heaven, meeting Jesus Christ, having a life review, getting the chance to return, glimpsing the future, receiving a mission before coming back, and suffering a transformation. Those are basically the 9 commonalities I found. And it also made me think that in prehistoric times, people who had these mystical experiences, these NDEs, in which they had these encounters with God, this light being we call Jesus, or heaven, they became the shamans of their tribes. In prehistoric times, they were the wise men, because many people, when they have an NDE, they come back with powers like telepathy, healing. They have this wisdom. So I believe that the original spiritual paths in ancient cultures were created by these NDEers, and STers who had this contact with, who saw their dead relatives, who met these masters. So what I try to do here is I got all the commonalities, and I wrote, I supported each commonality with testimonies from 25 different near-death experiencers.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Of course, yes. You can ask whatever you want in the comments, or you can email me. My email address is ajparrbooks@gmail.com. I'm also found in YouTube, AJ Parr. You'll find me and also in Amazon. Just type AJ Parr and you'll find my books. I'm also in Audible. I have over 30 audiobooks. And I'm also working as a book coach. I'm helping several people who have had near-death experiences write their first books. Right now, I'm helping Carlos Vivas. I'm also Lawrence Brock and several near-death experiencers, and also people who have had interest in writing a book or publishing. I have a publishing company for people who are independent authors. They want to publish in Amazon, but they do not want to they want to keep their independence and, make their money and have no intermediaries. So I help them set up their accounts and all that. That's actually what I work on. So this NDE research is basically like a hobby. Also, my work with I do make money with the institute that I'm working with, but I make a living with my books and helping people write their books.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
My main lesson, I would say there are two lessons. Death does not exist. Life goes on. Do not fear death. If someone died, that person is still alive. We will all be dead in 50, 100 years. There's nothing to worry about. It's normal. It's part of life. But actually, people continue living. And the other thing is, according to the life reviews, the main reason why people are judged is how they treat people. Don't do to others what you would not like, how you would not like to be treated. They call it the golden rule. And I believe that this is also present in all religions. Realize that we are all brothers and sisters, and that we should be aware that we are all one. And although I'm not perfect, and no one is, but we can strive to be better and also be grateful. That's one thing I have found. If I make a mistake or if I am going through hard times, I always try to think that there are many reasons to be grateful for. And if you make a mistake, rise on your feet and continue. If you treated somebody wrong, well, ask the universe to forgive you and try to do it better next time. But be grateful, because as long as we're here, we have another chance. We are still growing.
AJ, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
On the contrary, thank you, Jeff. This was an honor.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.